This is Robin on the Road, your concierge for all things travel. And today I'd like to take you on the road with me to Arlington National Cemetery and a tour of the unique graves of Arlington Cemetery. Pack your bags, let's go. On a recent on-the-road trip to Arlington, Virginia, I had the pleasure of visiting Arlington National Cemetery. I have been to Arlington many times during my life, and I can tell you it is one of the most beautiful places to visit. Set on the hills above Washington, D.C., the cemetery will affect you, and the memories of this place will stay with you for the rest of your life. For it's in these hallowed grounds that the story of our country and the men and women who fought for it is not only told, but visualized. A very thorough search will be conducted before you enter the visitor center. Water may be purchased or brought in, but no food or alcohol is permitted. Open 365 days a year, the hours are seasonal. Maps and brochures, significant history and information can be found at the visitor center. Tickets for the tour bus can also be purchased here. Check the Arlington website and make sure that the days you are visiting that the bus is running. There is a bookstore located at the visitor center as well. Bathrooms are here, plus at the Tomb of the Unknown and the mansion. Plan before you visit Arlington. There are so many graves and a lot of ground to cover. The Arlington website is an excellent resource. Wheelchairs and strollers are not rented at the visitor center but can be accommodated. There is paid parking lot at the cemetery and a metro stop just outside the gates. I was at the cemetery for 6 hours, and it was not possible for me to visit all the graves that I had on my list. On January 28, 1986, the country watched as Space Shuttle Challenger exploded 78 seconds after takeoff, killing the entire crew. The unidentifiable remains of 7 crew members, including those of the first civilian in space, Krista McCullough, are buried here. The grave of Lieutenant Colonel Francis R. Dick Scobie, whose remains were identified, are close by. The tragedy of the Challenger brought the country together as we honored Lieutenant Colonel Francis R. Dick Scobie, U.S. Air Force, Captain Michael J. Smith, United States Navy, Mr. Gregory B. Jarvis, Dr. Ronald E. McNair, Miss Sharon Krista McCullough, Lieutenant Colonel Ellison S. Onakazuka, U.S. Air Force, Dr. Judith Resnick. A poem by John Gillespie Maggle Jr. is on the back. The identified remains of Captain Michael J. Smith are buried in Section 7A. On February 1, 2003, the country mourned as Space Shuttle Columbia broke apart during re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. It was the shuttle's 28th mission. Lieutenant Colonel Michael P. Anderson, U.S. Air Force, Captain David M. Brown, U.S. Navy, Captain Laurel Blair Salton Clark, M.D., U.S. Navy, Dr. Kalpana Chawla, Colonel Rick D. Husband, U.S. Air Force, Commander William C. McCool, U.S. Navy, Colonel Ilyan Ramon, Israeli Air Force. The identified remains of Lieutenant Colonel Anderson, Captain David Brown, and Captain Laurel Clark, M.D., have individual graves in Section 46. Walking around the cemetery, I came across a very impressive obelisk with the name Thomas Selfridge on it. I had no idea who this was or why he had such an impressive grave. In 1908, the U.S. Army was interested in the purchase of airplanes. They had to travel 125 miles at 40 miles an hour and seat 2 people. Orville Wright was in France, so Wilbur was giving demonstrations at Fort Myers, which was located in what is now Arlington. He had made 13 flights with officers as passengers. On September 17th, Thomas Selfridge was that officer. A few minutes into the flight, the propeller broke and a plane that was no more than wood and canvas broke apart. Wilbur Wright was badly injured, but Thomas Selfridge lost his life, making him the first casualty of U.S. air travel. Across from the Coast Guard Memorial in Section 8 is the monument and marker to Robert Edwin Peary and Matthew Henson, the men who discovered the North Pole on April 6, 1909. Peary joined the U.S. Naval Civil Engineer Corps, and after several failed attempts to the North Pole and many lost toes, his 1908 expedition, which will be his last, is when he and Henson discover the pole. His wife Josephine is also buried here. She was an explorer in her own right, and in 1891 will become the first woman to explore the Arctic. Matthew Henson was an African-American born to sharecropper parents in Maryland. He was orphaned at a young age and spent several years at sea as a cabin boy. Peary hires him as an assistant, and between 1891 and 1909 they will conduct 7 Arctic expeditions. Henson's 1912 book, A Negro Explorer at the North Pole, will tell of his experience. Peary receives a Congressional Medal of Honor and promotion to admiral. Henson will not get official recognition until 1944 before he passes in 1955. He is buried at New York's Woodlawn Cemetery. In 1988, he will be reinterred in Arlington next to Peary, a long overdue honor. Things to know before you go. Arlington National Cemetery is open daily from 8 to 5. Water may be brought in or purchased, but no other food or beverages are allowed. A thorough bag check and 100% ID check is conducted at the Visitor Center. Parking is $3 an hour with a max of $12. No pets except for those with disabilities are allowed. Tram tours depart every 20 minutes from 8:30 to 4:30. The tour is a live narrated loop and an on-again, off-again tour that makes 4 stops. Tickets can be purchased at the Visitor Center or online. Check with the cemetery as trams do not run on special occasion. Adults are $19.50, children are $10.75, and seniors $15, with special prices for military and veterans. The changing of the guard ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is conducted every hour on the hour in winter and every half an hour during the summer months. Wheelchairs and strollers are not provided at the visitor centers but may be brought in. The ground is undulating and there are lots of ankle twisting holes throughout, so watch your step. There are several honored days. Flags and wreaths are placed on all graves during military holidays and Christmas. The Arlington National Cemetery webpage and app are an excellent source for information. There are so many graves to see, and even though I had a plan, I ran out of steam before I was able to see all the graves on my list. Take time to plan and then expect surprises. You will not be able to see all the graves in one day. For this on-the-road trip, I chose to stay at the Hyatt Regency Crystal City. It was actually less expensive than some other choices, including an Airbnb. Be aware that nothing is included with your room. That means meals or parking. There are free trams to the metro, or you can walk to one in about 10 minutes. The metro is the best way I have found to get around, and there is a station right outside Arlington Cemetery. I will provide links in my description. Lastly, I would like to thank you, fellow traveler, for joining me on this tour of unique graves at Arlington Cemetery. Please smack that bell and subscribe, and show me some love with a like or a rumble. And check out my latest video on Clover Hill Village, a glimpse into rural Virginia life from about 1830 until 1930. Until that time, this is Robin on the Road, your concierge for all things travel, and I hope to see you out there on a road of your own. Until then, safe travels.